Back here on the review, episode 17 of season 1. Hello, everyone. Brendon Hodges here, as always, or at least most of the time when I'm available, here on CBB Review's flagship podcast. Happy to have you alongside us. The weather a little bit better in Syracuse today. Not snowing, but it's still very gloomy, and there's plenty of white stuff on the ground. We'll see what the weather's like in Kansas when Ariel Puterman comes on in a little bit. For now, though, we'll go ahead and hop into my starting five. And today, well, lately you guys have seen that I've had a couple gripes with the NCAA in general, but now I have some gripes against teams that are reportedly, and I want to stress reportedly, having discussions behind closed doors about maybe opting out of their conference tournaments. That's our first topic of the day when Ariel gets here. I saw a tweet over the course of the week. It came from, and let me make sure I get the name right on this, John Canzano out of Portland. He is at KGW TV and hosts a radio show on Portland 7:50 a.m. as well. Tweet saying Gonzaga and BYU are weighing whether they should opt out of the West Coast Conference basketball tournament. Nothing in it for either program except risk of injury, bad loss, and infection. They're both NCAA tournament bound regardless. WCC ADs are talking about this. First of all, I'd just like to say the notion that the WCC is going to get they're going to get their automatic bid no matter what, right? The fact that a team like, and this is nothing against BYU, they are a good team this year. Gonzaga is just that much better though. The fact that BYU could have the nerve to think, we're not going to show up, and because we're going to get an at-large bid anyway. If you want to know what that does, let's now look at the Missouri Valley, where you have two teams, Loyola Chicago and Drake, right up there at the top. They split their series together, and they could both foreseeably make the tournament if one of them got an at-large bid, because one of the two of them is going to win their tournament. We know that already, and at least we think we do, until some weird upset happens. If Gonzaga and BYU decide, you know what, we're just not going to show up, you either, and this is mostly towards BYU, risk not getting that at-large bid because of that decision in the committee's eyes, and Gonzaga will get an at-large bid even if they lose their tournament. They're just that good. There's no way that they don't make the tournament. But BYU risks losing that at-large bid or the automatic bid to a lesser team that people might not want to see in the tournament, or if BYU, Gonzaga, and that automatic bid team from the WCC do get in, you risk not having a team like a Drake, like a Loyola Chicago in the tournament that deserves to be there based upon their performance because you decided not to play in yours. There's also the fact that, it's a conference tournament. You want to win a conference championship. The fact that you're giving your team, I believe it would be for the WCC, a week and a half bye, basically, until their first tournament game. I mean, if we want to have competitive consistency, then NCAA, please make them play in their tournament. I know you probably don't have the power to do that, and that's up to the WCC ADs, but I hope to God that the WCC tells Gonzaga and BYU to cut the crap and play, because not playing should not be an option. It shouldn't be an option even for UConn on the women's side. Gino Auriemma made his position clear, saying he wouldn't want to go to the tournament because it wouldn't be worth his while. And while I agree that it probably wouldn't be worth his team's while because they would mow through the Big East, they should go. Play your way into the automatic bid, please. You never know if you would lose in that tournament and get dropped down a seed line. That's what March Madness is so well known for. A big team loses in their conference tournament, loses a seed line, has a different road to the national championship. That's how it goes. Competitive consistency is key. Gonzaga, BYU, play in the WCC tournament. You're going to see all of these other tournaments being played, and every team's going to go because they want to improve their resume or prove that they should be where they are. It should be no different for you, even if you are the consensus favorite to win it all this year. Yeah, you're one of the two last undefeated teams in the nation. So what? Play. With that, we'll go ahead and bring in Ariel Puterman, coming to us live from somewhere in Kansas, even though he has a California flag posted on his back wall. and we'll get his thoughts on this gripe, another gripe that I really have. So, Ariel, I already said pretty much everything, and I'm assuming you were listening to me when I said it, but I'll read it anyway. So, if you did check Twitter this weekend, which I'm sure you do because you're a responsible journalist for CBReview.com, you probably saw John Canzano's tweet. It was retweeted actually by Fran Fraschilla, which is how I ended up seeing it. So the tweet again, Gonzaga and BYU weighing whether they should opt out of the West Coast Conference basketball tournament. Nothing in it for either program except for risk of injury, bad loss, and infection. They're both NCAA tournament bound regardless. WCC ADs are talking about this. Now, usually people will just retweet and they'll have like, that 2-eye emoji where it's like eyes wide open. Like, okay, that's interesting. Fran Fraschilla, though, had a very interesting point to make when he said, no sweat, but at WCC Hoops forfeits automatic bid, obviously, which I honestly, I would be against it because every conference should get an automatic bid. But to get a third team into the tournament like that is that's kind of a low blow to the MVC. If the A-Sun had two good teams, I'd want to see both of them in there, but they wouldn't because of something like this. Now, in all seriousness, and you heard me mention UConn on the women's side, Gino Auriemma is saying it's not worth it in a COVID year to sit his players in a hotel for a week and play a tournament that they're probably going to win anyway. And they're probably going to be on the 1 seed line and make another run to the Final Four. But we'll probably see it on the women's side some. We'll probably see talks like this on the men's side leading up in the next couple of weeks to when those conference tournaments start. So let's do a quick case study, Ari. What do you think the potential positives, and there may not be many, at least in my eyes or your eyes, but what are the potential positives for teams who may want to opt out of their conference tournament?
Just like you mentioned before, the risk of injury, the risk of any kind of COVID-related issues. We see this so much in college football. We see top players in the draft opting out of their bowl games because they don't want to risk injury for their NBA draft combine or their NBA draft stock. We saw Jalen Johnson do it for his NBA draft stock. So I think that's a big thing. As a team like Gonzaga, you don't want a guy like Kispert, Suggs, Timmy, Nemhard, any of those guys to get hurt before the tournament because, like you said, they think they're going to win it. So I think that's the biggest positive in this case, and that's why teams are seriously considering it.
Well, we're going to turn this into a bit of a debate show segment right now because while you mention all of these players, in the NFL especially, those like I believe Christian McCaffrey did this, along with I think Nick Bosa did as well, but he got injured earlier in the year. You compare a Jalen Johnson from Duke this year, Duke, a 500 team. He may not think they have a lot to play for, and those players in lower tier bowls are also thinking they don't have a lot to play for. Nobody really agrees with it. Oh, there are people who do agree with him leaving. Most people don't. They say, play. Why are you like jumping off the ship from your boys and not playing your last game? It's with the teams that are going to the tournament already saying we're going to jump ship because we're already going. It just makes no sense to me in that regard because you're then taking away the validity of other conference tournaments and possibly taking away an at-large bid from the Atlantic 10 maybe, or even a Big Ten team, a conference that's so ridiculously deep that you could foreseeably see 10 to 11 teams from that conference in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with you. Honestly, I was looking at BYU's schedule, and I don't even know if they're an automatic qualifier. Their best win this year is San Diego State, who is a tournament team. The other tournament teams that are projected, according to Lenardi's latest bracketology, they haven't beat any of those guys. They've lost to Gonzaga twice. They lost to USC. There's another team I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think their resume is as impressive if people are making them. I know they're an 8 seed right now, but without that conference tournament, even if they make the final, lose to Gonzaga again, at least that's another quality loss. So I really don't see if there's a few teams that do well in their conference tournaments, BYU can get bumped out. And then what does that say to the players, like as a sign of giving up? And another thing, really, I think we've seen this a lot this year is that teams, when they go on pauses, they struggle. We've seen teams go on 2-week pauses, 3-week pauses, miss 5 or 6 games, and they come back, they look very wobbly. They lose an easy game. It takes them a week. We saw Texas. Look at Texas. They were the top 3 team in the country, and now they don't even look like a top 3 team in the Big
Well,
12.
Michigan for a half as well was pretty shaky against Wisconsin the other week. And yeah, their second half was great, but the first half was ugly.
Exactly. So what happens to a team like Gonzaga? Luckily, Gonzaga is good enough where they can afford that. But what if a team from, like, let's say the Big Ten, but what if Baylor does that? Because Baylor's been on pause so many times this year. What if they decide to just skip the tournament? How are they going to be affected by that? So I think it's a really big decision. It's a big decision for a team. It's not something that the rest of the league, the fans are going to approve of, but you have to do it for yourself. And it's all ultimately, is it worth the risk?
So we've kind of answered this next question already about the potential negatives of a team skipping out of their conference tournament. But let's change it up a little bit. What league do you think would be the most affected in a negative fashion by a decision of, say, Gonzaga or BYU to skip out on the WCCs?
I think you just mentioned it, but the Big Ten, I'd say Maryland, maybe not anymore, but if with a win or two, Maryland, Michigan State, if they somehow win 2 of their next 3 against Michigan's, Iowa and Illinois, I think those are 3 of their last games, maybe Ohio State. Um, Rutgers is also on that bubble. Indiana's on that bubble. So I feel like 1 to 3 of those teams won't make it, and it's certainly not going to help them if a team like Gonzaga sits out because that takes away a spot for them.
Absolutely. Well, it's an interesting conversation to have. We'll be talking about it more, especially as conference tournaments roll around. Part of our news from today is conference tournament dates being flipped because they want to at least get them in and get that automatic bid secured for a team so they don't have to do something weird like buy winning percentage. They want these teams to play head to head. We'll get to that in the next block, though. For now, though, we'll take a time out and head to a break. This is The Review. Stick with us. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about today, and it'll keep going over the next few weeks as well. So stick with us here on episode 17 of The Review.
Just push the button.
Back on The Review, B Block coming at you. And, well, I'd like to bring this up first. You guys don't really see behind the scenes of what happens at CBB Review. And it's funny, we were in a little bit of a shoot-off, I think about a week ago, maybe even over this last weekend, in regard to a certain member of the crew's 40 time. I actually started this conversation. It brought up something where we could actually do some more content, perhaps a CBB Review Olympics. Right now, I believe betting odds have Sam Bass as the favorite for the 225 bench. Because I didn't realize it. I don't realize it on Zoom, but that man is huge. Like, he's got to be at least 6'4", like 215 in a picture. Like, he looks a lot smaller on camera than he looks in person. And he sent a video of him benching. It's just ridiculous. Like, he's actually like pretty big. And I'm like 6'3", 6'4". So when I say pretty big, it's like pretty big. This man, though, Ariel Puterman, had he was the one who brought up this CBB Review Olympics. That would be like an NFL combine sort of deal, a 40-yard dash, a bench, a 3-cone drill. The older gentlemen who write for the site were not as pleased by this decision that was made by the executives, meaning no one really. Matt Majinski had no input on it because he was the one who's 40 we were all making fun of. You're in a 6'5" and a 6'2", so roast him in the comments if you'd like. Roast him on Instagram as well. We love making fun of Matt, especially when he doesn't show up for any of these. He said he's coming back for a few in a bit, but those are the stories that I'm liking to give you from the inner workings of CB Review. Let's head to the stories in college hoops, the biggest ones from this last week, and we'll start with a couple that actually came out today, Ari. More news about the NCAA tournament, and it's big news for fans. The NCAA allowing a limited number of fans at every round of this year's tournament. That was announced, again, earlier today. It'll be up to 25% capacity with physical distancing permitted at all rounds, including the Final Four. And that decision was made in conjunction with state and local health authorities in Indiana. That source being from ESPN, Jeff Borzello. The next story will be as well. But the fact they're going to have fans at games when in most cases we haven't seen even 25% capacity of fans at games is going to make the NCAA tournament feel like the NCAA tournament, not just some regular season games or like an NBA bubble. There won't be any fake crowd noise. There will actually be real crowd noise, which will help the players, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that news. Actually, the first thing I did when I found out the news is I looked up how much tickets costed. Just
Do you have an estimate for us right now?
I'm actually curious how they're gonna do it because I feel like in the past, they kind of give you a pass for a few games that day, but with the limited capacity, it might just be per game. But I think it's a great idea. Obviously, the fans mean so much. I go to University of Kansas, as a lot of you guys know, and we've been having fans. I'm gonna be at the Texas Tech game tomorrow, so look out for me. But yeah, I love it. As long as everyone stays safe, respects the rules, they're very tight on the rules. If someone takes off their mask or if people are sitting too close, then they really enforce that just so there's no external problems. I think it'll be great. And I think the players will really appreciate it because the fans just mean so much to momentum and how the teams play.
Well, another piece of information from the NCAA, this time from the D1 Council, they announced Wednesday the recruiting dead period for really every sport would be extended through May 31st. That continues a ban on in-person recruiting that's been in place since the start of the COVID pandemic. The council said it would provide an update on a potential return to in-person recruiting no later than April 15th, meaning that there is a chance coaches will be able to attend events during the June and July live periods, at least for men's and women's basketball. With the dead period potentially ending in June, it will have been at least 14 months since there were official campus visits for prospects or in-person evaluations by coaches. And that's big, at least for this year's class of graduating high school seniors, because they'll have gone that full senior recruiting cycle without making in-person visits and seeing like, oh, wow, this campus looks nice. This school feels great. I feel like I could fit here. And they'll possibly be the only high school recruiting class ever to not be able to step foot on campus unless they went their freshman, sophomore, junior years.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest parts about coming to college is actually going and seeing the atmosphere, seeing the location, weather, all that stuff. There's so much you can do on the outside, looking at virtual tours, doing Zoom calls with the coaches, but actually being there is so important. So if they have that opportunity, I think that'll be huge. I think a lot of people actually maybe change their minds, maybe be set on one school, and then if they were allowed to attend these in persons, then maybe even change their schools. But it seems like for now it'll still be online, and there's still a lot of good recruits left. Obviously, the G League thing has become a big deal, but I really hope they do because as someone who's in college, you obviously are also in college. I'm sure a lot of the viewers have gone to college and went through that college recruiting experience, going on campus. It's really fun. It's a really exciting experience. So I hope that they get to experience that.
Absolutely. Moving on, though. So we all know Duke has had a pretty rough season. Sorry, Duke. I don't feel bad for you at all because you've had plenty of good seasons too, and this is just a one-off. So they're 500 overall. At least they were when I wrote this reader, and they're also 500 in conference play. And now they're going to be without one of their young stars for the rest of the season. Blue Devils freshman forward Jalen Johnson announced he'll opt out the rest of the season in order to get 100% healthy for this upcoming NBA draft. In 13 games this year, Johnson averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He's projected to be a lottery pick this year's draft. And not that it really matters for Duke in terms of their tournament hopes, because they're kind of hanging on a thread right now, at least in my eyes. But how do you think that this opt-out will affect Duke the rest of the year?
I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Obviously, they're 2-0 since the opt-out, but his contribution wasn't as big just because he was hurt for a lot of the year. I think it's bigger for him and his draft stock because if you're a team and you're seeing this guy who gives up on his team halfway through the season just because they're not competing, what does that say about his future? Obviously, all these teams are in rebuilding. So when they become competitive, how much can you trust this guy to actually commit to this team? How much can you commit to him long term if you can't even commit to a team for 1 year? So for him personally, I don't like this idea, but I understand it. For Duke, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. They're an NCAA tournament team unless they win the ACC tournament. But I don't know. Maybe recruits will look at Duke now and see this and maybe be a little bit off put by this that someone felt this way because we haven't really seen this. maybe James Wiseman, but that was obviously a different situation. So it'll be interesting to see if Duke really has any effect. I don't think it will, but we'll see.
Second to last, we'll go ahead and actually link the last two stories because it has to do with cancellations and movement and schedules. We'll start with the cancellations. So the McDonald's All-American Games won't take place for the second year in a row amidst the pandemic. And they went ahead and announced 700 girls and boys nominees for 2021 games on Thursday. It will announce its completed 48-player roster, 24 girls and boys, later this month, and will honor the class through a virtual celebration. The list of nominees included athletes from 44 states and Washington, D.C. Most of any state was Texas with 87. And then finally, there it is. The Atlantic 10 announced Thursday it was swapping the dates of its men's and women's conference basketball tournaments to afford more time for any COVID-19 interruptions and issues. Maybe we'll have more on that. I hope we'll have more on that story when Monday's edition of the review comes around. For now, though, those have been the biggest stories in college basketball since we last saw you. Now let's head back to the present for our second topic of the day. And I mentioned the weather earlier in this episode, probably right at the beginning. I didn't ask you, Ari, how's the weather in the Midwest this time of year?
It's actually funny you said that. On Monday and Tuesday, we had school canceled because of the blackouts because it was so cold. But it's gone a little better. I think it's around 21 today. And I think I actually saw it's supposed to go up to 50 next week, which is beautiful. So we got very lucky that it was only short-lived, this bad weather that the Midwest has been getting.
Well, it was only short-lived, but it had a major effect. Not just, I don't want to, let me put this into context. I don't want to discount anything that's happened to the population of the country, especially in Texas. That is a horrible thing that has happened to a lot of people, losing power for extended periods of time. But we're looking at this through a sports lens, and so we'll continue to do that. But weather has ended up playing a lot bigger of a role this year in a COVID year than would usually ever happen. It's really the perfect storm when you think of COVID cancellations and now weather cancellations. So I'm sure you've played a sport, Ari, where it's been canceled or at least affected due to weather. Maybe baseball and it starts pouring rain, the game gets postponed to a couple of days later. I played soccer for a while when I was a kid, and rain would often postpone games, especially if it was coming down, there was lightning. At this time of year, though, as we approach the college basketball conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament, weather is really, it was an afterthought, and now it hasn't been that because games have been canceled. Now, in a year like this, we've already seen so many COVID cancellations, especially in the Big 12, which is the conference that's been most affected by these cancellations. And now they're having COVID cancellations, they're having weather cancellations, and teams are losing opportunities to boost their resume to try and get into the tournament as an at-large bid if they can't win their conference tournament. So I'm going to ask you, and there could be plenty of teams that could be your answer for this question, but which team or teams are going to be most affected by not just COVID cancellations now, but by the weather cancellations that took place this last week?
Well, I think you hit it on the dot when you said the Big 12. We've seen what Baylor's gone. They've had 6 top 25 games postponed or canceled, which is crazy to think about how many games that is. I was actually reading something that Baylor, so they've only played 9 conference games, and the average for the Big 12 is 12 conference games so far. And they have a rule that if one team plays 4 less games than the average, then all those games they miss are count as losses. So there's a chance that Baylor doesn't even win the Big 12 because they just have all these losses added to their schedule, which is crazy to think about because they're undefeated right now. But yeah, Baylor's had a bunch. We saw that Oklahoma-Texas game get canceled because of weather on Thursday, and that was a huge game for both of their resumes. A big tournament game, or not tournament, a tournament potential game. So yeah, the Big 12's really had it rough. Luckily, Kansas has had a pretty good record. They've only had 1 game canceled, which was postponed, and they ended up playing it against Iowa State. But yeah, it's just brutal. And like I said, it's supposed to get nicer here, so hopefully that same fortune happens everywhere else.
Yeah, really lucky for Kansas that the one game that got postponed for them was against the worst team in the Big 12. Isn't Iowa State like 1-15 right now?
In the Big 12, they do not have a win yet. They're 0-13. They don't have a win in 2021 even, which is crazy.
All right. Well, it's interesting. I didn't know about the Baylor thing. that if they play 4 less games than everyone else in the Big 12, those games are counted as losses. So let's use them as a case study for this next question. Then how do you think that a situation like that, or for really any other team, losing games due to COVID, losing games due to weather, may affect their conference tournament seeding? We know how it would affect Baylor. They would drop like a rock. They would probably end up being a 4 or a 5 seed rather than the 1 seed as an undefeated team. But how do you think that will affect their NCAA tournament seeding? I don't see it affecting that as much.
I think it depends how they do in conference play. If they do struggle in conference play, obviously the seeding doesn't matter in conference play because if you're the best team, then you're going to win anyway. But if they maybe make the quarterfinals, then there's a serious chance that they actually go down to a 2 seed, even though them and Gonzaga have been locks from day one. So it's very interesting. Hopefully that they don't have these automatic forfeits, but they only need to have one more game canceled for this to happen. So it's a crazy situation. I think one that no one ever thought would happen, but here we are. So we'll see what happens with that.
Here we are indeed. And here we are heading to our second break of the day. C Block coming up next. Stick with us. It's the review. Back on the review, episode 17. Brendon, Hodges, Ariel, Puterman, coming to you from 2 very cold places. One a little bit colder than the other. You can take a guess at which one that is. We're back here for the C block, and C stands for various things in terms of basketball. I think, no, it really just stands for one, and that's coaches. I had 3 C's, I think, in like episode 4 or 5: consistency, chemistry, and competitiveness. But it stands for coaches. That's the first word we think of when we hear C. And coaches are often the most scrutinized people in sports, especially at the college level, because they're on the go all the time. They have the recruiting cycle to deal with. They have the season to deal with. There are no breaks for college coaches, and we don't give them any mental breaks either. Today, though, we're going to at least give them a little bit of positive press because Nate Oates has done a heck of a job at Alabama this year already. Like, they are for real. They are on fire. They haven't run through the SEC, but they've been consistently the best team in the SEC this year. Big news for Oates as well, because he just got a contract extension through 2027. God, I can't even imagine what life's going to be like in 2027. But I thought we'd look at coaches who are most deserving of contract extensions for their performance this year or consistently throughout the years. Coaches who are on the hot seat, and even our coaches, well, your coach of the year, because I'm not the analyst, you are. But we'll go ahead and start with which coaches do you think are on the hot seat? I believe you have one, right?
I'm actually going to give you 2 here. My first one is going to be Archie Miller, the Indiana head coach. When they signed him to that contract, he was the 5th highest paid coach in all of college basketball. And since he's been there, they've really done nothing. Last year, they were a borderline tournament team. This year, they're a borderline tournament team. They've never been more than the 8th best team in the Big Ten since he's been there. And for such a storied program like Indiana, they're hosting the tournament this year. You'd expect more. And Archie Miller had a lot of hype coming into him when he signed with Indiana, but he really hasn't delivered. And I think maybe it's time for Indiana to give another person another look because he hasn't been the guy. And my second one's Bruce Weber from Kansas State. I know they were in the tournament 2 years ago. They won the Big 12, which was a big deal. But the last 2 years have been absolutely unacceptable. He's done a bad job recruiting. He's done a bad job coaching. They've gone from a solid team to really a bottom feeder in all of the Power 6 conferences. So keep an eye on him. Kansas State loves him. He's been there for a while, but I think it's time to maybe move on from him and look for a younger, more ready for this team kind of coach.
So we'll do away with the negativity for coaches now because they get too much of that. But what coach do you think is in line for their own large contract extension due to their performance this year, or at least for the last couple of years?
I'm going to go with Andy Enfield, the USC coach. I think this year he's done a really great job. The Pac-12 hasn't been that great the last couple of years, but USC has really stood out this year. He's done a great job recruiting. He got Okongwu last year, who went top 10 in the draft. Evan Mobley, who's probably going to go top 5 in this year's draft. And they're winning games, That's all that matters in college basketball, just winning. And that's what they're doing. It looks like they're on pace to win the Pac-12 now. After for a while, it looked like it was just UCLA. They've really stepped it up. They're looking really hot right now, one of the biggest win streaks in all the Power 6 conferences. So I think that USC, they found their guy. It might have taken a couple of years, kind of like Scott Drew, but I think they found their guy and they need to keep him.
Does Andy Enfield still hold the record for like best free throw percentage or something like crazy like that? I remember hearing that when he was coaching Florida Gulf Coast against Georgetown. They said he held some ridiculous record, like either consecutive free throws made in like the college ranks without a miss or free throw percentage.
That might have to be a 4-point play one day.
It may be. We'll look that up and but I don't think anybody on the actual staff watches these enough because we have a lot of stuff that could be used in a 3-point play or a 4-point play. And the methods of how I do those are changing all the time. That would be something that nobody would get right. And I would be very happy about. So I will look that up at a later date. You'll know that it's probably going to be a question coming up here now. So you have a head start on that. But we'll go ahead and ask you now, who is your coach of the year?
I'm going to go with Chris Holtmann here. I don't think a lot of people had Ohio State even competing in the Big Ten. They were around the 5, 6, 7 mark in the Big Ten. And look at them. They're the 4th best team in the country. I think they're better than Michigan, in my opinion. We'll see who's really better on Sunday in that big game. But he's really done a good job. A lot of people gave him criticism because, like Archie Miller, he was the 4th highest paid coach when they signed that contract. And for a football school, it didn't make a lot of sense to give him that much money. But he's really done a really good job with them. They've been in the top 5 at one point the last 3 seasons. This season, they're peaking at the right time. They're really taking control in one of the best conferences, if not the best conference in college basketball. So I think he deserves the award this year.
Fair enough. Good stuff. And with that, we'll head into my favorite segment. It's the 3-point / 4-point play because I have to. It's not as snappy, I know, but I have to include that part in it as well. And I'm not sure if you watched the last episode at all, Ariel. Did you get a chance to watch the last episode?
I did not. It's been a busy week.
How dare you? Well, we changed the rules for last episode because a friend of mine, shout out again to Dan Baldwin, had a very interesting trivia question. We were at a dinner one night. And I changed the 3-point play one time to fit that method. And so I'm doing it again because coming up with 4 questions is a lot harder than just coming up with one really hard one. So you know the rules for the original 3-point play, Ari, but this time there's just one question. It's a list. You're going to be listing off 20 of one thing. And if you get 5 right, you get one of the 4 points that can make up the 4-point play. Simple enough, right? Now, because I don't want to make it a one and done sort of deal, I give you 3 strikes. So you can guess, but you don't want to throw out just wild guesses, okay? You're good with that?
I'm good with that.
All right. Well, so today's theme has to do with what we just talked about. Coaches. There are some really good ones. There are some really bad ones. Like I said last time and this time, we're sticking with 20 as the maximum that you can get. But this time it comes with a twist. So today you're going to be naming for me the winningest coaches in NCAA history.
Is this by percentage or total wins?
Well, I'm so happy that you said that. It is by win percentage.
Cool.
All right, total wins would have been a little too easy. Win percentage is a lot harder. Now, this is not exclusive to active coaches. So it's the top 20 all time. Like the top 20 all time. There are some current coaches in there. There are some old coaches in there. The other thing is you have to go in order.
All right. I don't think I'm going to do very well then, but
here's the thing. So right now, the standings for the 3-point play, you're tied for second place. Matt Carter had a great showing in the last 3-point play. He's moved up to tied for second place with you and Matt Waldman with 5 points. Matt Majinski must be like very confident in the fact that you guys are going to like be really bad at this or just have no confidence in himself because he hasn't shown up in a while. He's at the top of the leaderboard with 7 points. And this could push you toward the top of where we have that like overall quiz that's just an episode at the end of the year, right after the Final Four, that decides who wins this year's 3-point play. So you got to be pretty strategic with who you pick. I think you're going to do better than you think you are. And I will, because this is a really hard one, for 5 of them, I will allow you to ask me what school they're best known at coaching for, because this is a really hard one. And yeah, I just don't think you're going to get you might not, you should get a lot of these, but it's really hard to get them in order. So I also should say this is current and past coaches who have over 600 wins in a Division I program. So Bo Ryan does not count, despite the fact that he coached at Wisconsin for a while. It's just guys who have either exclusively coached at D1 or have at least 600 wins, winning percentage. You can start at the bottom for 20, or you can start at the top, number 1.
I'm going to start at number 1. I'm going to say John Wooden.
And that's your first strike.
Number 2, John Wooden.
Well, you still have to do like the top one, Ari.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm going to go number 1, Coach K.
That's your second strike.
All right, I'm going
to use the school they coach for.
Yes.
Gonzaga.
Okay, number 1, Mark Few.
That is correct. He has an 83% winning percentage. Like I said, you have 5 of those. You already have 2 strikes. So if you want to just go down the list with 5,
I'm going to this.
Would you like to use that?
For the next 4.
Old Kentucky. I'm going to give you a little this is a really hard one, so like I'm going to give you as many hints as I can give you. Old Kentucky, like 1960s.
Is this Adolph Rupp?
That is correct. Number 3 you've already said.
I'm going to go Coach Wooden here.
That is correct. That's 3. Number 4, how many of the school you've used? 2 schools so far. Would you like to use another one?
Yes.
UNLV.
Oh, I have no idea.
You're kidding me.
It's on the top of my head, but I can't think of the name.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I know. It's a Friday. Give me a break.
What do you mean it's a Friday? College basketball like lives on Fridays and all the weekend.
There's no games on tonight.
None that you probably care about. Hey
Yeah.
man, come on, and UMBC is a big game in the America East tonight.
I'm going to add a skip to our game.
No.
All right.
If you want, I can change. Okay, you know what? I don't want to waste a segment because that would suck. So we've gone through the top 3. I'm going to go ahead and take the strikes out of it. And I will give you the school they coached for. So you got Mark Few, you got Adolph Rupp, you got Wooden, even though I really gave those to you. So I'm going to give you the school. However many you get right out of 20 is how many points you get, like fraction-wise for 4. So UNLV.
I'm not going to get this one, but I'd love to hear who it is.
All right, we'll tell you at the end. North Carolina.
Roy Williams.
That is incorrect. North Carolina again.
Roy Williams.
That is correct. Kentucky.
Coach Cal.
That is correct. Duke.
Coach K.
That is correct. 1 second. Kansas.
I want to say Bill Self, but I'm not sure if it's him or Paul Gallen, but I'm going to still go Bill Self.
That is correct. Kansas again.
I'm going to go Paul Gallen.
Iowa.
Is it Fran McCaffrey?
It is not Fran McCaffrey.
What?
Michigan State.
Tom Izzo.
Oh, God. I don't remember who this guy coached for. Give me a second.
I just want to apologize to the viewers of this video for my lackluster effort. I'll make it
You
up.
should apologize. They gave you 3 minutes of lasting support, and you absolutely botched it.
I know. I apologize. I'll make it up to you guys next run. I'll do some.
Better. You would better. Okay, where are we? There we are. Western Kentucky.
Oh man. I have no idea. I'm gonna skip.
All right. I'll give you all 5 of this guy's schools because I don't think you're going to get it right regardless. Creighton, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma State, and San Francisco in that order.
Oh man. Yeah, I have no idea.
Indiana,
12 night.
Syracuse.
Jim Boeheim.
Now I'm going to give you the ones that aren't so easy. This coach, these aren't the schools that he's known for, but Hawaii, Boston University, and Iona.
Rick Pitino.
That's correct.
I only knew that from Iona.
Yeah. Akron, Cincinnati, and Kansas State. He was there before his current position at a school in the Atlantic coastal area. Not in the ACC, though.
Oh. I have no idea. I was going to say Bruce Weber until he said that wasn't his current, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Northeastern, and this coach is currently at, I believe this is a D3 school.
No idea.
Really? And then finally, Louisville.
Louisville. I feel like this is an easy one, and I'm completely scatterbrained.
It's not an easy one because you already said Pitino, so you know it can't be him.
I'm gonna pass. I have no idea. I don't really know coaches besides like the ones that I've coached in the last 10 years. I need to do
What you're saying is you have mad recency bias. Okay. Let's see how many you got right here. I got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's good for 2 points for Ariel. That moves you up into a tie for first place. An absolute gift.
No, I'll take 1 point for the help.
No, you got 11. You know what? I'm in a giving mood today. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because my birthday is next week. Who knows? But I'm in a giving mood today. The ones you didn't get. You ever heard of Denny Crum?
No.
How about Eddie Sutton or Edgar Diddle?
No.
Well, those are a few that you didn't get right. You didn't get Jerry Tarkanian.
Okay.
Dean Smith.
I should have gone Dean Smith.
Lute Olson.
Okay.
Bob Huggins. And Jim Calhoun.
I should have gone Bob Huggins.
So an average performance from you today. But, you know, most 3-point plays go a lot worse than that. Some can go better. And I think part of it is also on me to structure it in a way that makes sense to people who don't necessarily get at what I'm trying to get at. But most of the blame's on you. Like 5 to 6% of it's on me. 95 to 94% of it's on you because you have a chance to study college basketball more than I do since you're only a bachelor student right now. Anyway, though, that was our 3-point play. We'll head into our final break, closing up shop next with Ariel's stories to start your weekend, as well as game picks, including some games that were canceled. So we'll be flying by the seat of our pants with that because we did not learn they were postponed until about an hour ago. So we'll be back with that. Until then, though, enjoy the break. Stick with us. Back on the review. Weekend is upon us. The sun must be setting somewhere because it doesn't look too bright outside the editing suite I'm in right now. And we'll go ahead and we'll look forward to the weekend with Ari Puterman's stories to start your weekend. Ari, what you got?
I'm going to go with Mizzou basketball. They've lost 3 in a row after being named the top 4 seed. They've slid down to a 6th seed, but they have an easy game against South Carolina. So is this team for real, or are they just falling at the wrong time? That's what we're going to find out within the next couple weeks. And the other one is Baylor. They haven't played in over 3 weeks. They get a game against Iowa State soon. The pause. Obviously, Iowa State's the right team to play against, but how are they going to be? Are they going to really play like we've seen them play, or are they going to struggle a little bit like we've seen a lot of other teams?
As for me, I love this team because they're one of the best in the ASUN, and my sister goes there. Bellarmine had their doubleheader canceled this week because of COVID cases in, I believe, North Florida's camp, which leaves them with only one other opponent to play this year in ASUN play. It just so happens that team is the team that's right behind them in the ASUN standings, the Liberty Flames. So I'm interested to see how Bellarmine works through this little pause they have and game plans for Liberty next weekend, and that'll decide who wins the ASUN regular season championship. And the fact that they can do that in their first year, huge for the Knights. We'll head into our game picks, though, and like I said before the break, some of these games were postponed recently, some as recently as today, so please forgive us if we're a little slower with the picks today. But Ariel Puterman is going to have to make some educated decisions about who he picks. You can't have any Sam Basses here saying Ohio State's a national championship contender perennially. You know what perennial means, right, Ari?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Anyway, we'll go ahead and start in the A10. Dayton playing St. Louis. St. Louis had an 0-2 start to conference play. They also had a long COVID pause, but they've won their last 3 in the A10. Now, Dayton won the first matchup. It was a really close game. Will they sweep the season series on their home floor?
This is probably the best mid-major game of the week. 2 good teams, 2 teams that need this win. I know a bunch of the guys at CV Review, the mid-major guys, they love St. Louis. And I think that they're going to take this one. I think that they really understand how important this game is, and they get the win here.
Big talk from Ari, going with the home team. The home team is in my home state. We'll skip the next one because that got postponed and move on to the Summit League, one of the most underrated rivalries in all of college sports, because you think of these two schools for not even FBS football, but FCS football. But North Dakota State and South Dakota State, just they don't like each other. And I love it about that rivalry. Like, it's just great. So I don't know if they play for the Dakota Marker in basketball as well. I know they do in football, but I'm sure there's some trophy on the line that I've never heard of. But who wins, North Dakota State or South Dakota State?
I might have to be a little bit biased. Mike Daum is one of my favorite college basketball players ever. One of the most underrated careers in college basketball history. One of the best scorers of all time. One of the most impressive stat lines of all time. So I'm going to go with my South Dakota State boys here to pull out that
Your South Dakota State boys.
If I had to pick one Summit League team, that's my team. So I'm going to side with them.
That is a very slim, what's the word I'm looking for? That's a very interesting parameter there. Your Summit League team. That's like me saying my favorite, English championship soccer team is, I don't even know who's in it. I'll say Newcastle because I think they're still in it. But who knows? They haven't been promoted to the Premier League yet, I don't think. Anyway, moving on to the nightcap game for the entire Friday slate. It's going to be a good one. Boise State playing Utah State, 2 teams right at the top of the Mountain West. And this could be a real, how they say a 6-pointer in terms of soccer, you move up a slot. This is a real 2-gamer in terms of the standings, because Boise State 12-3 in the Mountain West, Utah State 11-2. If Utah State wins, I believe they hop in front of Boise State solely because of number of, they'll have the same number of wins, and Boise State will have 2 more losses. But Boise State's at home. Not that it really matters who wins.
Yeah, you were exactly right with what you said about the conference, the standings switch. But yeah, both teams really good. Both teams playing for a spot in the NCAA tournament. One will probably be an AQ, the other one an at-large. I think Boise State, they're a really good team, one of the more underrated teams in the country. And I think that they take this one.
I'm scrolling through the postponed games to make sure that some of them aren't on there. Thank goodness this one isn't. UNC our resident Southern Conference fanatic Matt Waldman will love the fact that I have this game on here. He won't love the fact that Wofford's not playing in it, though. UNC Greensboro taking on Chattanooga. Potential huge swing. Again, a real big two-gamer for either side. Chattanooga 2 games back in the Southern standings from UNC Greensboro. So a win here could cut that deficit in half.
Yeah, I actually had UNC Greensboro as one of my sleeper teams at the start of the season. And they kind of let me down because, they've been so good in the last couple of years. They're still atop of the tournament.
Let you down. They're 15-6.
I thought they'd be one of those Belmonts that just win all their games, but they're still doing pretty well. They could be a sleeper in the tournament. We'll see. But yeah, I'm going to pick them to win this game. I don't think Chattanooga's got what it takes to beat this team, especially since they're clicking at the right time, but should be a good game nonetheless.
Are you telling me that you want to pick Belmont's game today? Because they're playing Tennessee Tech. So it's Belmont 23-1 against Tennessee Tech 3-21.
Yeah,
I have some rhyme and reason to these game picks that they're at least going to be slightly competitive. That feels like a 60-point spread, so I'm not going to let you pick that game.
You clearly watched that game.
Belmont's really good.
You clearly didn't watch that Tennessee Tech game yesterday because they only lost by 1, but it was to a 3.
To who?
It was Tennessee State, who are 3-16.
Yeah, so exactly. Don't talk to me about you didn't watch the Tennessee Tech game yesterday. Of course I did. Because nobody cares. I'm sorry, Tennessee schools. Tennessee basketball is the big dog there, and Rhodes College after that. You guys are irrelevant. USC, we talked about them earlier in the program. They've been tearing out the Big 12. Pac-12. Jesus, it is Friday. They're tearing up the Pac-12, and like you said, Andy Enfield deserves a contract extension. Will he back that up again by beating Arizona this weekend?
Yeah, Arizona, since the postseason ban, the self-imposed one, they haven't been as dominant. They started the season really hot. I think they started 9-1 or 10-1. They're still good. They're still a contender in the Pac-12, but they're really not playing for anything. USC obviously is. Evan Mobley, one of the best players in the country, and he's just continuing to get better, really showing off how good he's going to be in the NBA. I think they have this one.
We'll move on to the ACC. Florida State playing Virginia Tech. Florida State just dismantled Virginia. It was impressive what they did to them the other day. Now they go up against the other ranked Virginia team looking for a sweep of, I don't even know what they call. What is Virginia? Is it like the Keystone State? Or that's Pennsylvania. I don't know what Virginia is. They're looking to sweep all the Virginia teams. Hokies, though, aren't a team to overlook. They've won 3 of their last 4 to pull within 2 games of the conference lead. So who takes one step forward in their chase of Virginia, who's at the top of the ACC?
It seems like every year around mid to late February and the conference tournament, Florida State's the hottest team in college basketball. We saw that last year. 2 years ago, they were one of those teams. Leonard Hamilton, I don't know what he's doing right, but it works. And they have this big game against Virginia Tech. They're a very inconsistent team. They just absolutely destroyed Virginia, but then they'll lose to a much lower team. So I don't know what Virginia Tech team we'll see on Saturday, but I think Florida State, like I said, they always get hot at the right time, and I think they take this one.
I'll move on to the Big 12. So Matt Majinski's favorite player to hate, if you haven't tuned into this program, is Mac McClung. And at least in my completely impartial opinion, because we have the Kansas fan here, he's due to drop at least 30 on Kansas. But I'll ask Ariel Putnam who wins between Kansas and Texas Tech and how many points Mac McClung scores.
I think you're forgetting one player on Kansas, and that is the reigning defensive player of the year, Marcus Garrett. He did a great job on Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham, when he was guarded by Marcus Garrett, shot, I think, 30%, which is crazy because we all know how good Cade is. That's not saying that Mac McClung couldn't easily drop 20, but I don't think he's going to be the real reason why they win if they win. I think it'll be someone like Terrence Chandler, Kyler Edwards.
Are you saying Texas Tech's going to win?
With that being said, Kansas already beat Texas Tech on the road. Kansas has a bunch of fans in the arena, and I think that slight home advantage will be the reason why Kansas wins this game.
You're such a homer. That's okay. I don't care, but the look on your face when I said that was like, oh, yeah, I need to fix this right now. Staying in the Big 12, I'm not sure. This game may have been postponed due to weather too. Is Texas West Virginia postponed?
Let me double check on that, but I don't think it was. Let's see. It was not.
Oh, well, great. So Texas is playing West Virginia this week. First game of the series. Really close. Really good game. Who wins it this time?
Both teams going in opposite directions. Texas is trying to get that back. West Virginia, Miles McBride. Can we talk about how good he's been? Derek Pulver too. That dynamic duo might be the best in the Big 12 after Mitchell and Butler for Baylor. Texas, this is a big game for them. And I think they're at home, so that's another important factor. However, I think West Virginia, since Toshibwe left, they've really improved, and I think that they take this one.
And then finally, you mentioned this earlier, and we already had the mid-major game of the week, and that was the first pick. Now we come to the actual game of the week out of the Power 5, Power 6. Ohio State playing Michigan. It's the headliner. It's the main event of the weekend. It might be the most popular watch this upcoming weekend without any football because it's on a Sunday, which makes it that much better. So number 3, Michigan, we mentioned. They shook off the rust in the first half against Wisconsin and then blew them out in the second. Got the win, didn't let the COVID pause beat them. They really needed that because they're going to Columbus this week, and Ohio State, CJ Liddell especially, has been fantastic over the last few weeks. So it's going to go a long way, this game will, in deciding who's left standing at the top of the Big Ten after the season's over. But who vaults into the pole position and the catbird seat to get there on Sunday?
You know, since the Gonzaga-Baylor game got canceled, this might be the most anticipated game of the season. Both great teams really outperformed expectations this year, especially Michigan. I had them as the 8th best team in the Big Ten coming into the season. They're number 1 right now. With that being said, Michigan hasn't really their best Big Ten opponent this season has been Wisconsin, and I would put them at 5 right now. So going from Wisconsin as your best opponent to Ohio State's going to be a big jump, and I don't know if they're ready to handle that, so I'm going to go with Ohio State here.
Well, that's the end of our game picks for this week, guys, and that signals the end of yet another episode, a Friday edition of The Review. Ari, thanks for joining us, and for those of you in the audience who are watching this on YouTube after the fact, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support. Stay tuned for our next episode coming up on Monday. We'll have a lot to talk about then as we head towards the conference championships and eventually the NCAAs. But Ari, thanks again for joining us. Any last words that you want to give to the audience after a semi-triumphant return to the three-point play rankings?
I just hope everyone stays warm, everyone stays safe, and next week is the last week of regular season, so I hope everyone's excited for the next couple weeks.
We can tell you that we are, so we can guarantee you conference championship previews coming next week. Until then, though, we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Friday. Watch some college basketball this weekend. This has been episode 17 of The Review. Take care.